Hey there, everyone. Today I'm looking at Heavy Rain. So, this game is very funny, mainly because of all the memes that it spawned from, the father here calling out his son's names, both Sean and Jason. And so it's really funny because they use the same mechanic multiple times. So I thought, if you ever wondered, like, oh, is his son named Sean or Jason? He actually has two sons. And that's the whole premise of this game, which is that essentially one of the sons dies in this accident. And so it affects him and his life, and he can't really move on from it. And as, marriage falls apart, and then, the next part of his job, or of his life rather, is to basically, live with his other son, Sean, who would then ends up getting kidnapped by this, by the serial killer called the Origami Killer. And so the story is divided into a bunch of separate little sections where you play as, Ethan. And then you play as the woman that's trying to help him, an investigative journalist. And then you would play as the police officer. And so you kind of rotate between each of these stories, but the gameplay basically never changes. And I guess on that, this is kind of the first iteration or the first era of what I'd call the movie game. Sometimes there are games that are like movies that don't really intend to be. However, the intention with this game is really to actually be like a movie. And so the mastermind behind these games is David Cage, who is a French game developer who is kind of eccentric, and his writing style is how would I describe David Cage's writing style? It kind of measures between being completely, very interesting, nuanced, it might have a little strange gimmick or something, and it'll be something very, very intense and interesting. And then in the same moment, it'll do something so completely stereotypical and juvenile and just stupid that it's almost shocking. And you really, as a player, or just sometimes the dichotomy between the two different elements is just very funny. So, like, you have this very super situation where Jason is missing in, like, the supermarket or in the shopping mall, but then you can just spam the name Jason over and over again. and so like these stories that David Cage creates are like tend to be super serious, but then they just have these incredibly stupid moments in them that make them so cherished. And I have to be honest, like, playing these games with a friend has been one of the best multiplayer experiences I've ever played. They can't actually control it except for, like, the sequel, which is Beyond Two Souls, but for the most part it's just single player. But what's really fun is, like, if you have someone who's not really associated or used to video games, they can sit on the couch and, like, tell you what to do, how to act in certain situations. There are a lot of times you have to make choices, and there are branching paths and multiple endings, and it's very funny to have that sort of experience where again, these games, they try so hard to be serious that they become silly sometimes, like a bad movie almost, but they're pretty decent. And so most of the gameplay really, as I said, David Cage is trying to make this game that feels like a movie. So you have a lot of, just like button prompts. You have a lot of very scripted sequences where everything is just, use a button to do this. Use, press A to, fill your coffee. Do everything. A lot of things in the environment are kind of, optional. You don't have to do them. But, again, that kind of adds to, I guess, the gameplay. But yeah, a lot of these things in this game are just very, very questionable, very odd, some very interesting just sequences that just David Cage doesn't care what you think of him. He's just going to make the experience, and you're just along for the ride. And I really love that about him, even though I technically should hate these games because, well, one, they kind of bring the medium back. I mean, this kind of reminds me of, the Shenmue kind of era, which I did enjoy as a game, at least the first half. But this whole idea that movies or games have to be movies, or they have to be interactive movies, is just something not fun. And like as a general principle, as a game, the amount of richness of experience you get from a proper game is a lot more than this. But anyway, these things have their own special kind of vibe and principle to them that you can appreciate. So yeah, you kind of just go through different chapters linearly. You'll kind of explore the environment, interact with objects, do button prompts. Then there'll be a cutscene usually, and then you'll have different kinds of environments. So one thing is that you'll have to, investigate a crime scene. I forgot the FBI agent, Norman Jayden, I believe his name is probably one of my favorite characters. Definitely based on has the same vibes as the Twin Peaks kind of detective, very kind of quirky, interesting, weird kind of guy. And so each character gets a different ending depending on how you play the game. And so that encourages multiple playthroughs, but honestly, I'd never want to do that because, again, the gameplay is kind of very boring. So the main quest with Ethan is finding his son, catching the origami killer, or really saving his son. He doesn't really care about the origami killer. Then you have, the detective whose mission is also, to catch the origami killer. Then Norman Jayden, his struggle is such that he uses his like VR technology to help him investigate scenes. And like, I think if you fail his mission, then at the end of his game or whatever, or at the end of the game, he'll like be sucked into the VR world and be, kind of comatose. So yeah, your decisions do technically affect the ending, and again, there's multiple endings to get. It's all just quick time events. So I never really thought about it because I hadn't played Shenmue before I played this game, but this really is kind of like the Western Shenmue, and not exactly in a good sense, but that's kind of what it reminds me of, a bunch of context-oriented things telling a movie story rather than an actual game. Again, there are also, besides the investigative scenes, there are also certain dialogues where you can choose to say certain things that will affect how different characters react to you and will, of course, affect the endings. And that really becomes a lot more prominent in his other work. Cage usually has some kind of overarching theme or message, and in this one there really isn't one. This is more so reminiscent of just a typical thriller horror movie, almost like Seven. Definitely not as graphic, obviously, but that same kind of we have to catch the serial killer kind of vibe. There's really not much else to the game besides that, except that it can be unintentionally extremely entertaining, especially when you do the wrong thing the game doesn't want you to do. It's pretty funny. And yeah, this is kind of how I think a lot of people got introduced to David Cage. This game was critically reviewed. It was like, oh yeah, this is like a great experience because it's very different and new. So eventually David Cage became a name in the industry, and this is really how most people found out about him. I actually want to go back and play his earlier works like Indigo Prophecy and Omicron. But for this for a lot of people was the game that was the David Cage game and has a lot of memes about it. Again, there are just questionable things that David Cage does where, for example, there's this one scene where you're playing as the female character and your house gets broken into and these like assailants come and like basically try to apprehend you. And there's this whole sequence, right, where it's like, oh no, what's going to happen to the attractive female character when she gets broken into by like 4 guys? And it turns out that entire sequence is just a dream. It's just there for like, oh, my fantasy. What if? But no, I cannot say. But what if? I don't know. Again, David Cage just does whatever he wants, and we just have to like go along for the ride. I think it's very funny. I think again, some unintentionally funny things. If you try to fail every quick time action, especially in the chase sequences, those are really entertaining. Seeing the FBI agents stumble around the entire supermarket while chasing this guy. But yeah, no, this game does tell a decent story. It is kind of silly and quirky sometimes, and kind of very funny how they hand over player control during these very stupid moments. And the playthroughs of this game, again, are very, very funny. But overall, this game is it's definitely something unique. I guess I'd recommend it, but it's not for everyone. It's just very weird, I guess. But yeah, there's not much else to say about Heavy Rain. It is a product of its time and iconic of the Cage experience, and again, a very unintentionally funny game. So with that, I'll kind of leave you with that, and see you guys later. Bye.